Put up the chat. And there you go. Okay. And it's 3 o'clock, so let's get started. All right, welcome to week number 7. We are working our way through this. These 2 chapters actually complete the first half of the course. And there's actually a lab only for chapter 11 and not for chapter 12. So, might give you some less stuff to do this week, which is never a bad thing. And next week, we begin the next section of the course. And as always, if you're going further ahead, there is nothing wrong with that. If you're going at the speed that we're going, cool. Anywho, this is chapter 11, covering the update manager. Just like anything else that's IT related, you do not set and forget it. You have to maintain it. You have to update it. Because if you realize anything about the world of IT, and it's always a cat and mouse game between the bad people, the security folks, and everyone else. So just like an operating system, and just like everything else that we use and support, we have to update VMware. They release updates all the time to all their products, to all the services, and we have the update manager to help keep us and our systems up to date. This thing is specifically built for vSphere, so it handles natively updating the different areas of the infrastructure. You can configure this to do it automatic or schedule it at a certain time. You can make baselines. It'll help with scanning and remediation without having to add something new into the infrastructure. It's there. Of course, it has to be able to connect to vCenter and out to the internet. It'll have its database. You could use Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server or the one that's built in to the latest version of vCenter. Either way, you could use any of those databases to maintain updates. A lot of this is already built in. It's just how you configure it. Oops, forgot to set streamer mode in Discord so we don't hear all the little beeps. Update manager, of course, has to have the right privileges in order to handle its job. Here are some of them that you need to enable, like network connectivity, the download settings, the schedule, the VM settings, and host settings. Because like I said, a lot of this can be done automatically, which is great. You can create baselines, and they're not your typical baseline. This is the performance that we expect, and let's find some anomalies. It's more of kind of like a service pack for Windows. So we can say what is the host critical dynamic patch, or what is non-critical. We can separate our updates into different groups. When are we going to update VMware versus the ESXi or the virtual appliance? We can group these together into different baselines if needed as well. You can use the new baseline wizard to create these. It could be fixed. They could be dynamic, built for a host or a specific patch or extension, depending on your infrastructure and how it's set up and how critical it is to keep things up. Because it could be that your infrastructure doesn't have to be up all the time, every day, every hour. So you can have some downtime. You can build a baseline that way. You can attach baselines in the update manager. You'll have attached baseline. You can scan for updates at the scan for updates button, and that'll look for any patches, any extensions, and upgrades. Once that happens, then you can review the information and decide what needs to get installed and what can wait, again, depending on your infrastructure. Once you see things that need to get updated, you can either do it immediately or schedule it later. You can specify which hosts will get updated first and which will get updated second in a sequence. If it's an update to a host in the cluster, then we know that the host has to go into maintenance mode. So HA and any other disaster recovery systems will take place to be able to shut down one host at a time, update it, bring it back online, bring down the next, and so on and so forth. That way the services remain on all the time. When it gets the patch recall notification, it can do one of three things. It can generate a notification for you. It could be flagged as already done, or delete the patch binary from its local repository. Any patches that need to get recalled to ESXi are not uninstalled until there's a new patch to take place. The agent manager can be used as well. It baselines your ESXi clusters automatically and lets you know when they are not compliant. They can also handle remediation for you. The great thing about all this is that you can turn this all automatic and not have to worry about a thing, except when things don't work. vSAN, because it is software-based, will have updates, and that is part of the update manager. So if there is an update to the vSAN infrastructure, you can get an update for that too. So like I said, your system baseline ensures that your cluster is compliant. It has all the updates necessary, and it'll keep track and let you know when something is not compliant. As I just mentioned earlier, doing updates requires systems to go into maintenance mode. So things like HA and DRS will take place to put hosts into maintenance mode, perform the update or perform the patch, and then bring it back online when it sees that everything is done. Again, having all the right permissions means all of this can be done completely automatically. So you don't necessarily have to keep watch over it. You just see the result at the end that it completed successfully, and we move on, which is great because it's one less thing to worry about. So that should make a very quick video. Like I said, these two chapters are small. So we'll be able to get through this quickly. Cool. And upload the video. Oops, 174, not 174 complete. Not made for kids. And public. Excellent. Video's already up. All right. Last chapter. Chapter number 12, vSphere troubleshooting. The final chapter in this set of VMware ICM. These are some tools and some troubleshooting tips when working on vCenter, because we hope that everything works, but you know, things sometimes don't always work out and we have to find out why. First and foremost, you know that Google is your friend. If you've been in IT, one of the things that you learn most is how to search online for help, how to put in the right query to get the answer you're looking for and not get a bunch of junk, and filter through that junk to find the information you're after. You can also refer to the VMware knowledge base, which has a lot of the errors and information that you could use as well. There's also the VMware community, where you can ask questions based on specific forums for specific products, and hopefully find the answer to your question there as well. Your host client, you can use whenever there is emergency management and vCenter is temporarily unavailable. This is what you would get if instead of going to the web address of vCenter, you go to the IP address, for example, of the ESXi host itself. You touch this briefly when you first set it up, and then you would go to vCenter to join the host into vCenter, have vCenter control. So it is possible to use this as well in case vCenter goes down for whatever reason. Unless you set it up where you disable that, then you're stuck. But hopefully you didn't. And you're set up and you are able to get to the hosts individually by going to their web address. Charts are always important. They help us see what's happening over time and kind of start getting a picture for the issue and what could start answering some questions. Remember that vSphere, VMware can create these charts for you. And they can be printed and exported. Diagnostic messages show up in the GUI and in log files. Sometimes you'll be able to read the message just like this. Other times we'll need to go into the log file to see the whole complete message. In this case, looks like our failure was to extend the swap file. We might be out of room in the storage of this system. Your logs. vCenter server puts all its log files in var log VMware. You will see some subdirectories for vCenter components, but and things like first boot will show up in var log. But for the most part, all the infrastructure that we will manage and use for the most part will be able to see the logs in var log VMware. Here are some of the common logs to all vCenter servers. From here, it could depend on what you have added to your infrastructure. Your management node logs will appear in your appliance. And here are some of the important ones. So these will show us, especially when we have multiple vCenters connected together. But if it's a single node, you'll see them in one place with all the other logs that we just mentioned in the earlier slide. Platform service controller logs are these. And again, they'll show up in the same place as the other two. vpxd.log is your main log for vCenter server. That is an important file to keep watch over. That's where you'll see most of the vCenter activity. Now, if I were you, I would find a way to get this log to either show up in vCenter, which you can, or have it also forward to like Splunk to save a copy, just in case vCenter, for whatever reason, becomes compromised and an attacker tries to remove the log, and so that way there's nothing left. I would forward things like this to Splunk. Each individual host, of course, has their own log, and you'll find those logs in var log. Not var log VMware, because that's vCenter, just var log for your hosts. Again, some of the useful logs at your host level. It'll depend on what they're doing, but some of the more common are these: host D, syslog, VM kernel, VK warning, and VMK summary. Like I said, you can view the logs directly within the web client. Under monitor, you'll hit system logs, and then you can select the specific log to read. And it's basically just a cat of the contents of the file. As long as you have access to the host itself when you're in front of it with a keyboard and monitor, you can also view the logs that way as well. You see in this picture, we can get access to 6 of the logs just through this UI. The Syslog Collector is your single location for all the hosts to write their log file. by default, it uses port 514 and 1514 for SSL. This is basically VMware's mini Splunk, getting all the logs from all your hosts into one place. It's already pre-installed in your server appliance, so it's already available to you. Here are just a couple methodologies for troubleshooting. It's not necessarily in depth because it all depends on your infrastructure and the problems that you're dealing with. As with any troubleshooting and anything IT related, you have a couple steps. You have to define the problem, because if we're working with a user, they're just going to say the default, the computer doesn't work or the internet is slow. And that's just not enough information. We have to dig deeper. So we have to define the problem. We have to identify the cause of the problem. We have to obviously resolve it. And number 4, which is not here, is we have to document it. We have to document the problem and its resolution. So defining a problem, is it configuration related? Is it a resource? Are we out of resources? Is it network? Are we bottlenecked? Is it a software bug in an application that's running in a VM? Or is it hardware? Is a RAM stick failing? We have to dig to find our problem. So collecting symptoms, using the logs, using the charts, using any alerts, putting it all together, looking at the symptoms to find the root cause of the problem. Because it could be something like the LUNs are disconnected, or it could be that our network card is bottlenecked. It's ideal to be able to reproduce the problem so we can really hone in on what it is. Scope creep can be a problem if we are unable to focus in on where the problem is. It could lead to just looking at the entire infrastructure, and that's just going to take longer to fix. If the system was working before, what changed? What was the difference between before and after when this issue happened? And is it known? Is it on the VMware forums or in the knowledge base? Or have you already documented it because another tech has worked on it before? Of course, there's different ways to approach a problem. You could do it top down, going to most specific, or starting from the general and working your way up. Again, it depends on the problem that you have. So it could be that you want to find the root of the problem and you work your way down, kind of like down the layers of the OSI model. We see, is it a problem with the application? Or did it happen because of a snapshot and some error happened? Okay, so is it that our resource pool is too small? But if it's not that, is it the host? Does the host have enough resources? And it could be that there's physical resources that are inaccessible and are causing the virtual machine to stop responding because, let's say, it ran out of RAM. So it can't work because we overcommitted. So we got to make some changes. Now, after you find that the root cause of the problem, you have to define, is this something that's high impact that needs to get resolved right now? Is it medium impact, which we can resolve when we have a open moment? Or is it low impact and it can wait until the next maintenance window? depending on that, can depend on our solution. Is it going to be a short-term workaround, or do we need to reconfigure? And what is the impact analysis of our solution? That could mean that we bring down a VM and a service is temporarily down, or it could be that we need to bring down an entire data center to reconfigure, which that's, the impact of that is going to be way bigger. So we find out about a problem by its symptoms. We dig down to find the problem. Now that we found the problem, we have to identify its impact and also the impact of the solution to the problem. And like I said, the last step would be after implementing the fix to make sure that it works and document. That way, if it happens again, someone can easily come back and fix it. So here's an example scenario that they have provided that vMotion migration fails with an error. You tried to migrate VM1 from the hostname ESXi01 to your second host. After a couple minutes, it just fails. So is vMotion the problem or a symptom? The error that we get was this. Because the destination host did not receive data from the source host on the vMotion network. Please check your vMotion network settings. So what we're looking at is the IP address assigned to the VM kernel port is in the wrong subnet. Oops. 72.20.14.51 and 172.20.12.52. That might not work if they're not on the same subnet and they can't communicate with each other. So based on the error message, it's failing because it's failing to connect over the network. So this is probably a misconfiguration of the host. So we'll need to check the VM kernel interface to see which one is misconfigured and properly fix that. So this is actually a high impact because it'll affect any migration and it'll also affect DRS. So because these two are not on the same subnet, they're not able to communicate with each other and transfer should something go wrong. So DRS is not able to function properly. So the short-term solution would be to not migrate at this time, and the long-term would be to fix the IP address. It shouldn't require downtime because the virtual machine is currently running on the first host. The second host can get fixed, and then the migration will happen. Then the severity of the problem can determine the service level. So if your company bought VMware support, you can kind of see how VMware handles. You could have your own setup. If you are managing a data center for somebody else, you could use something similar to this, kind of as a guide on how your response. If something is critical, then your response would be in 30 minutes or less. If it's something cosmetic, then it could be done within 8 business hours. It depends on the severity of the infrastructure and whatever service level agreement you have if you are the data center. Cool. Any questions? Looking at all my chats. Awesome. Start making a video of that. And if there are no questions, then I'll just stop the stream. And we can move on